Welcome, residents, to the Dr. DC podcast. My name is producer Richard, and next to me is the doctor himself.
Wah wah wee wah.
If they only knew. Each week, we talk about the weird and wonderful world of DC while fielding questions from listeners like you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's the energy you're coming in with, huh? This is the first episode of February. This is the first day of February.
You mean normal month?
Yeah.
Everything is...
I mean, we'll talk about that on the Patreon, but it's obviously, as it always is, normal February.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's a short month.
You're a short month. It's normal. Normal February.
God,
there's nothing short about it.
It's an average month.
It's a normal month. Actually, I think the longer months it's kind of like a disadvantage.
It's too much.
Actually, it's too much month.
Yeah, they're not as good as
July and August are both 31 days. Who needs that?
Yeah. Some would say that they don't really know how to month.
Yeah, I mean, only 28 days, but February knows what it's doing.
Yeah, it tries a little harder.
Yeah, it's happy to be there.
Anything, it's not super long. It's pretty thick though.
Yeah, I mean, technically, it is on a calendar wider than it is long.
It's a March.
It's a certified chode.
Yeah, so it's February.
Yeah, it's February, baby.
So we're talking about molecular mastery.
We're talking about transmutation.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw molecular mastery on the title.
Well, I made a fun title for the episode. But, I mean, it is that, we're talking about,
we're getting political. We're talking about transmutation.
Easy. I mean, I will say there was a little part of me that was also like, Twitter is even more of a hellscape. And
how?
And I was like, I should make the title of this veer away. But at any rate, no, we're talking about like characters that can like mess with like molecules, like can change an atom from one thing into something else.
Sure.
Like literal, like lead to gold, like alchemy, like actual transmutation. There's a bunch of characters with that power set, and I thought that would be fun to talk about.
I love that.
It's one that I've wanted to do for a long time. I keep sneaking it into polls. No one ever votes for it. And now I've just decided I'm doing it anyway because fuck you.
Yeah, because you wouldn't. It's not like you would manipulate a poll to get the thing that you wanted.
Clearly not, or we would have done this episode already.
Yeah,
so if anything, it strengthens my case that I don't do that.
That we've never done that.
I haven't.
And never will.
And, well, I don't know if I want to promise that.
I like that it's a thing that you've done, but you're still being
I have not done.
Yeah, sorry.
But I might want to.
Yeah, but that you're still willing to say that you
I might.
That just strengthens the fact that you haven't.
I absolutely haven't. Because if I already had, I wouldn't say I want to.
Yeah, exactly. No.
This is my, like, lying masterclass.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, this is you putting on your Castiel code. Well, with that, let's...
Truly, though, if I was capable of manipulating polls, there never would have been a Guy Gardner episode.
I mean, fair. Absolutely. If anything, you're really setting yourself for failure most of the time.
Usually.
All right. Well, with that, let's get... We have a lot of questions about this. A thing I was not expecting to have a lot of questions for.
Yeah, we got a decent amount of questions.
Yeah.
So
let's get into them.
Yeah, sure.
Which means we're going over to Facebook.
Going to the face and the book. Going to the Facebook.
And right at the edge, right at the line of Facebook,
okay,
is Kyle Sovey.
What does that mean?
He's encroaching on the rest of the notes that I have because he's right at the line on the edge.
Oh, you just mean like literally on your screen?
Yeah.
I thought you were trying to set up like a pun on his name or something.
No. Just Kyle Sovey is, encroaching on parts of other maybe segments.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I think you're taking a big swing that Sovey is a Russian name, and I think you're doing it because it's this close to the word Soviet.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm glad we're on the same page.
Okay.
What are some good Dr. Alchemy story arcs? I finished Gotham Central on your recommendation, and Keystone Cops and Corrigan 2 broke me.
Yeah, I mean, Gotham Central is great. God, good Dr. Alchemy stories. That's tough.
Not as easy, yeah.
Dr. Alchemy has shown up relatively recently, though, in Flash. Like this current run of Flash.
Sure.
The Adams run. Alchemy was in there. And that was all right. That was decent, actually. you know. Dr. Alchemy as a character, I should talk about just a little bit. So, he is also like a CCPD, like forensics guy. But he kind of has like a two-faced thing going on. So he has like a good personality and a bad personality.
Yeah.
At first, he
Sounds like me.
At first, he was a villain, and he went by Mr. Element. And he had like weapons and stuff that could do kind of like he'd have like, because he was a chemist, right? It would be like all of his like, he'd have capsules that do a thing. It was kind of like a, you know, like Walter White in early seasons of Breaking Bad, like using science for shit.
Sure, yeah.
He kind of had that sort of thing. But then he eventually finds this thing called the Philosopher's Stone. And he uses it
for eternal
with it. No, he actually gets the power of transmutation.
Oh.
So he could change like literally like lead to gold, like all of that kind of stuff. And he also changes his name, becomes Dr. Alchemy.
Okay.
And he gets all kind of wrapped up. The stone kind of has this sort of like kind of addictive draw for him. Plus he has this sort of like evil persona sort of thing going on. So Dr. Alchemy is a Flash villain with the ability to transmute elements and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Offhand, I don't know that I can think of like a particularly great Dr. Alchemy arc. Mm-hmm. But he shows up a lot in you know, kind of earlier runs of Flash. Like I said, he's just in this Adams run. He's shown up relatively recently. And I think he's a good power set. You know, we talked about Captain Cold last week or a couple weeks ago or whatever it was. And Dr. Alchemy is also neat because if the Flash's power is all about like moving his molecules and stuff like that, Dr. Alchemy could do a lot of the same kind of stuff that Cold could do. Plus, you know, he can change the air to something denser, so it's more for the Flash to run through.
Sure,
or he can, like, change what he's running on to be, you know, like the same kind of logic that Captain Cold works. I think Dr. Alchemy works, and I like that they're both CCPD like forensics guys. Like,
totally,
there's all that connection. Dr. Alchemy was on season 3 of The Flash. That's the character that Draco Malfoy was playing.
Did he ever like become full Dr. Alchemy?
He was. Okay. He was. I'm afraid I don't have like a great, like, you gotta read like this arc. Sure. I don't have one of those like kind of queued up for you. But Dr. Alchemy's stories, I think, are neat, and I think at the heart of them, it's also because to explain his power or what's happening, you have to talk a lot about science, and the Flash is such a good character for that as a scientist. So even in the old Bronze Age books, there was always this thing of like, well, like he'd explain what he's doing, like in the panel, he'd be like, well, if I vibrated this frequency, this will do that. Like the Flash is always like a explain the science kind of book.
Love
like
that.
For like a Star Trek nerd and shit like that, I love that. God, I'm putting the pieces together now. And I actually think Dr. Alchemy is probably generally underused as a character, but I do think it's fun to have another character that's like slots in that, like, you can over explain the science of
the
this
real
weird
world lore about it,
the power, and you know we know that like the stuff doesn't work on Star Trek, like it's not real or whatever, but like I love hearing like you got to reroute the like that shit. Is like
yes, of course.
And Dr. Alchemy, I think, lends himself to that. So go back through like Bronze Age Flash, like 70s into the 80s runs of Flash.
Yeah.
Or I'm pretty sure he's that old of a character. Hold on, I'm just gonna double check here. He's just gonna pull this up here. Albert Desmond. Yeah, he first shows up in 1958. That's only 2 years after Barry Allen shows up.
Oh, wow.
So he's an old character. Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, I think he's probably Mr. Element in that one. He's not Dr. Alchemy for a bit, but still.
Nice. Next question comes from Alex Bent. And then what?
If he's ever like... I mean, he gets people really torqued up when he talks on like a CB radio.
Yeah.
Because he says Alex Bent over...
Whoa, nice. Who asks, should Firestorm be more OP?
I mean, Firestorm is a very overpowered character, but I know what you mean. He's not often portrayed as how powerful he is. So Firestorm's primary ability is the transmutation of elements,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So Firestorm is 2 characters. There's been lots of different combinations, but the original was Ronnie Raymond and Professor Martin Stein. They fuse together because of something called the Firestorm Matrix, and they become the Nuclear Man. Firestorm is the Nuclear Man.
Nuclear.
So he has, he can fly, he can shoot energy beams and that, but his main power is transmutation. Now, for his power to work, he needs to know how to build the new atoms. He's literally like deconstructing and reconstructing molecules. So the setup was always that Ronnie Raymond was like the body and Martin Stein was like the disembodied voice in his head when they merged.
Sure.
So that Martin Stein, the professor, could be like NaCl, sodium, and then he could like do the thing, or he'd, give him the whatever the chemical compound of cotton candy, and then he could turn like a desk into cotton candy. But he needs to know how to do it. So that was partly, I think, a limitation they put on, is that it takes a little bit of time to think of the thing and know how to do it. And the other one was just like, there's always this character dynamic of like the voice in your head, and like, they always change up what it is. And if he argues with himself, he becomes unstable, like nuclearly unstable.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an interesting sort of thing. He is like a supremely powerful character, but is not necessarily treated that way. But if you want a relatively modern example, it's kind of a bad one because he's not actually featured that much in the book, but he is a big plot point of the book. It's Doomsday Clock.
Oh, really?
A big plot point of Doomsday Clock is that Firestorm is not in control of his powers, and it looks like he's turned like a whole city to glass.
Oh, wow.
Like by accident, like people and shit. Here's the other thing. Firestorm's power is technically only supposed to work on inorganic matter, not living things. But there's been lots of instances where either with enough focus or with some sort of corruption of the Firestorm Matrix, you could do like shit to people too, which is kind of fucked up. But in Doomsday Clock, a big plot point is about like Firestorm is like very dangerous. We need to like figure this shit out. It's part of like the escalating tensions in the superhero arms race. Is a lot of it centered on Firestorm, but it's not necessarily dealt with that way that much. I'd say, back in the day when there was more of kind of like a Cold War thing running through the Firestorm book, they did deal with that. Yeah, supremely powerful character. In Forever Evil, Firestorm is not really present, but he is used as like a glorified prison for the Justice League. Basically, the crime syndicate like force the heroes into the Firestorm Matrix. So there's too many of them in there. It's almost like a psychic prison they're being kept in inside of Firestorm, making him unstable. He could detonate and take out. Like they talk around it. When he gets stabbed in Identity Crisis with Shining Knight's magic sword, he flies into the stratosphere or whatever to explode because it's devastating if that energy gets out. So there's always like an allusion to how powerful, or at least how dangerous, Firestorm is. But truly, when you think of the power at his command, which is essentially just making atoms obey him, like that's a really wild power. He's essentially got a similar, in some ways, power set to Captain Atom. Captain Atom, though, they always write him to skew more kind of quantum, a little more esoteric that way. And Firestorm, they always kind of keep him a little more grounded, like turn a desk into pillows, make a thing. And Captain Atom is always more about like quantum entanglement and like if this then what, like there is a slight, probably deliberate sort of dividing line between how they treat them, but really, powers wise, there's a lot of overlap there between those two. I'd think of how powerful Captain Atom is. We talked about that before. So powerful that he's been sidelined forever. Firestorm, when was the last time there was a Firestorm book? Like just a Firestorm story? I think it was when they made that Legends of Tomorrow miniseries that had like 4, like it's an anthology, it had 4 different like books in it. And that was 2015? Like it's been a while since there's been a proper Firestorm book. There's no reason that he can't have one again. He had like 100 issue series through like the 90s or whatever.
Totally.
So
I think I've got most of it.
You could do it again. It's just all
right. Next question comes from Stephen Marion Almagro, who asks, Whatever happened to Metamorpho?
Metamorpho, the Element Man, a particular favorite of mine.
You've got some Metamorpho books.
I do. I've got
You've got the first one.
No, I've got issue 2.
Oh, is that what I got you?
Yeah, but it's
Oh.
very cool still.
Yeah.
It's got cool. So Metamorpho, the Element Man, is a favorite of mine. So essentially, he Rex Mason, archaeologist,
Yep.
like they all are.
Well, of course.
He comes in contact with this thing called the Orb of Ra, and the Orb of Ra turns him into this Element Man, turns him into this Metamorpho.
That's what I call my balls.
It's later.
The orbs.
Jesus. Good Lord. It's later kind of retconned that Metamorpho, like Dr. Fate or Swamp Thing, is kind of like a lineage. That Octon was this old,
Sure.
despotic Metamorpho or whatever. His power, again, everyone today has some version of transmutation. His is a bit different though, because it's about him. He could transform himself. Initially, his power was he could transform himself or a portion of himself into any element found in the human body.
Oh.
That later opened up to just be any element. But so he could make like his arm a gas and his leg or whatever. Like his sort of resting look is this sort of like 4-sectioned person that has this kind of like weird chalky kind of head and a purple side and an orange side.
Totally.
And one weird leg. And he kind of has this sort of like monster kind of thing because he can't make himself look normal. But he can do some shape-shifting things. He can change his state of being, like solid, liquid, gas. He can become like as hard as iron, or like he can do all of that kind of shit. Metamorpho was a big part of a book called The Terrifics, which was an amazing book.
Is that Morrison?
No, it's Lemire.
Oh, yeah.
But it was Mr. Terrific, Phantom Girl, Metamorpho, and Plastic Man in what is essentially like a Fantastic Four ripoff.
Yeah.
Very, very fun.
Love
and
that.
Really cool book. And it was cool to see him in like a big role there. Metamorpho is also part of Batman's Outsiders. The team that Batman makes when he leaves the Justice League is Black Lightning, Metamorpho, Katana, and Halo. And Geoforce. And Metamorpho's in there. If you he was also had one of the stories in that Legends of Tomorrow anthology. He's around if you look for him, and probably to the frustration of Firestorm fans, he's around more than Firestorm. You could
Really?
see Metamorpho more. Metamorpho is in fucking Danger Street, a book that's out now.
Wow.
Metamorpho's in there. He's an interesting character though, and I like that also it's not him changing other things. It's he could do it to himself. He is composed of all the elements and could make himself whatever he wants to be. And I think there's something really neat about that. So yeah, if you're asking currently what's up with him, he's in a book called Danger Street that features characters that appeared in the first issue special series. So it's got Warlord, and it's got a weird Starman, Michael Thomas in there, and all sorts of interesting characters are in that book. But Metamorpho is one of them.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's leave Facebook and head on over to Twitter.
Twitter.
First question comes from our favorite religious representative.
Chris Chan.
That's right.
Yep.
A name that came off very easy.
Nailed it.
Who asks, which character or power is the most scientifically accurate?
Ooh.
All right, science boy, what do you got?
Interesting. Huh. Okay, well, I mean, let's run through a few of them. I think the Philosopher's Stone rules it out for Dr. Alchemy.
Sure.
Likewise, the Orb of Ra has, even though Metamorpho's powers are very science-y, the source of his power is like full-on magic.
Okay.
So Metamorpho's also out.
Yeah.
Element Lad for example, from the Legion of Superheroes, comes from a planet of aliens that can transmute.
So theoretically, that is accurate.
Well, I don't think it is, because what organic ability would you have to change the elemental composition of I think it's easier to
it's
brush off. It's more real than magic, I suppose, but it's still on the far fringes of things. Captain Atom is living energy, which is not an insane concept, but I think it's, again, a few steps removed. Matter Master, who was a Hawkman villain, had a wand made of this... what was it called? It was called... the Chem something. It was like a fucking wand he had to touch to make his powers work. He didn't have actual powers. What the fuck was this called? Sorry, this I'm gonna. Mentachem. He creates this metal that responds psychically to him, not unlike the way nth metal responds psychically. And there's probably, if they haven't already done, there's probably interesting retcon room in there. But he makes this metal when he's in contact with it. He can then manipulate matter. He has telekinesis through it, and he could do transmutation and all these kind of other sort of alchemical things. That is maybe slightly closer, but we're still talking about a metal with psychic resonance.
Yeah.
Somehow, I can't believe I'm saying this. It's Firestorm?
Wow.
Only in the sense of, I guess, like Captain Atom, they essentially become living energy.
But isn't it Captain?
But Captain Atom is living energy and just has quantum powers. Firestorm, they at least put the extra thing in of he's actually, if you were to deconstruct what he's doing when he just puts his hand out, you might just see him put his hand out and a thing would turn into something else. But he's actually stripping apart molecules, removing electrons, breaking bonds, reforming things, moving protons and neutrons around, and building something new. It happens like this, and that bit is insert explanation here. But fundamentally, his power is very material. It's very physical. It's rooted in the building blocks of the universe. And so I guess somehow Firestorm is made the most, quote, scientifically accurate. If only because he has to actually know what he's doing. Even Metamorpho, I don't even really think has to think about, you know what I mean? He just makes himself lead or whatever. I don't know that Rex Mason knows the atomic structure of all of these things. I think you can just do it. It's different for him too, because it's his own body. He can sort of intuit that sort of thing. He probably feels it more than he knows it. But Firestorm literally has to know. If you say make sulfuric acid, he has to know what that is. How many of a sulfur atom, how many oxygens, how many, he needs to know that to do it. Wow. So on that logic, I guess Firestorm, just because the most actual science is involved.
Sure, yeah. All right, let's go to the next question from the Senator.
James Paulson.
That's right.
Holy shit.
It's been a while.
My God.
Who asks?
He won his midterm. He's back.
Who asks, what is the most cruel and evil use of this sort of power by a supervillain? If you had to come up with an evil method of using such powers, how would you use them?
Oh, this is a little basic, but it's the first one that comes to mind. I obviously read Blackest Night quite a bit. I've talked about it a lot. In that story, Ronnie Raymond, who has been dead for some time, becomes a Black Lantern. He forces a fusion with Jason Rush to become this sort of corrupted version of Firestorm called Deathstorm. Mm-hmm. So it's a dead Ronnie Raymond and a living Jason. And Jason is stuck inside this body, and he's the disembodied voice. And that Deathstorm, and they don't really explain how it happens so much in that book, that Deathstorm turns Jason's somewhat girlfriend to salt.
Wow.
And he does it by like ripping the formula for salt from like Jason's mind.
Wow.
And then kills her that way, like fully turns her. And that's pretty fucked up. And I think, there's probably lots of Firestorm stories where he just like, he's trapped someone, he just changes it so like there's no oxygen and they pass out or something like that. They do it maybe innocuously, but when you think about it, that's a little fucked up. There's a fucked up use of the power. I'm positive Metamorpho has been breathed in by people. Like has turned himself into a gas to do, you know what I mean? That's just kind of weird just because of it's Metamorpho. Like you have to breathe him in. Like he's not making something else.
Can any of these people, like, does changing into people count?
No. Although at a certain point we're going to be splitting hairs.
Instead of atoms.
Like if you're shape-shifting, are you making more matter or are you just stretching it?
Mm-hmm.
If you're making more matter, then the question is like, how do you do that? That's energy conversion because you can't just make matter out of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
This is all only dubiously, quote, science. If you're making new matter, you're just making it in the way you need it. You're not changing what it is. And I think a lot of these characters are like changing matter.
Sure.
They're taking a thing and either by like literally stripping it apart and rebuilding it or by magic or by whatever. They're just changing what it is. And I think that's slightly different, although again, it's a little kind of iffy. I mean, I can think of fucked up things you could do with the powers, and I don't necessarily know whether or not they've been used in a book. But like theoretically, you could just turn the air in someone's lungs to like, I mean, you don't even have to turn it to something gross. You can just turn it to like a non-breathable gas. Just like now it's all xenon. Good luck.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, or you could just turn, you could turn the ground to liquid and then they'd fall in and then you could turn it solid again. They'd like, just, you know what I mean? Like you could do fucked up shit with this kind of power. And some of it, I'm sure, has been done or partially done before. But the one that really stands out is turning Jenny into salt. It's pretty fucked up.
A fucked up thing that you could do is find senior citizens who are walking around and change buildings to look like their home or like places they lived.
Jesus Christ. I wasn't sure where that was going. I didn't know what to expect. That's so mean.
Is that my childhood home? Where do I live?
Oh no.
Mom, Martha, are you still there?
Oh, I just thought you'd like change their like heart medication to ecstasy or something.
I mean, that would rule. No, that would be nice.
Yeah. It's orgy night at the residence.
Where am I?
Yeah.
All right, let's leave Twitter and head on over to Instagram.
Now we're going to Instagram to take some questions and answer them. Yeah.
Whoa.
It's experimental jazz,
Ooh,
baby.
Freeform, baby.
Yeah.
First question comes from the real Josh Gill, who asks, is Zan basically a useless version of Metamorpho?
Right. So we talked about the Wonder Twins.
Yes.
Zan and Jaina. Zan is the one that can only turn into water things. I mean, I get the joke, and Zan is pretty useless. I guess if you go by the original Metamorpho thing, where he could only turn himself into the stuff that was already in him, then there's a sort of like Zan-like restriction, but Zan's is worse because it's only water. You know what I mean? Like you could only be water. Metamorpho could only be elements in the human body. But Metamorpho doesn't have that problem anymore. So now you have a case of two people that could change from solid, liquid, gas, or be any shape or any form, and one can only do it when it's water. Sure. And Metamorpho can do anything.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess by that logic, Zan is a shitty Metamorpho.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boo.
Nice.
Next question from the Multi Sanchez, who asks, would Buana Beast Chimera power count as transmutation? Also, does he put the animals back, or are they just stuck like that?
Again, this is, the actual, I don't know what the strict definition of transmutation is. So Buana Beast, one of his powers is what the wiki calls biofusion, but it's essentially like he can make chimera. And a chimera is like a blend of two animals. He could take two animals, smash them together, and make a new animal that has the best attributes or features of both. So he could take like a frog and a rhino, and now you get like a super strong, angry thing that could jump really far. You know what I mean? Like
Frognoceros.
Yeah. Oh, a rhinoceros. A rognoceros. Hey, I didn't say my power was naming things.
Hey.
Buana Beast. The quote-unquote white god of Kilimanjaro.
Ooh, yikes. The white savior of Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, I mean, essentially.
Yikes.
Do you need me to bless those rains? Africa? So if you're taking two animals and fusing them together, that's not unlike what happens to Firestorm. Yeah. Obviously, the outcome is slightly different, but you are kind of making a new thing. It's not just like shape changing or whatever. Like, he is kind of making a new thing. Sure. I don't know that it's necessarily transmutation. Like, the carbon in those things still is carbon.
Yeah.
It's just rearranged. It's put into a new position. But I don't know that he's necessarily like changing carbon to something else or changing iron to something else. Maybe, theoretically, in some small amounts, when you take two animals and make them one animal, you'd have to do a bit of that, because otherwise there's too much of X or Y.
Totally.
So there's possibly a sort of transmutation thing, but I think largely no, Buana Beast power isn't really that.
Sure.
Also, Buana Beast powers are like heavily magic. So there's also that. I mean, he drinks an elixir, but it's the helmet that that has the chimera power, I believe. I'm pretty sure that that's like magic.
Sure. Just like magic.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna say no. I don't think that is transmutation, but it's a good question because it's close and it's gross. And yes, Buana Beast's power does like wear off, I'm pretty sure. I think even if he doesn't like literally separate animals again, they don't stay that way forever.
But do they like
if he puts like a rabbit and a snake together and walked away and like forgot it, like he left the stove on or something, yeah. I think eventually they would separate
painfully.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe it's horrible. Yeah,
they just like split apart. Yeah,
it's like the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah.
That was gross.
I know.
Do it again, ladies.
No, never mind. I'm not into it anymore. I've heard that. Next question comes from Dem Jankies.
All right.
Who asks, would the powers of the elemental avatars, Swamp Thing, Grundy, Earth 2 GL, count as transmutation? That's interesting.
I'd say no, kind of by the same logic that we're talking about. You know, so Swamp Thing, for example, he can't make plants out of nothing. Like, that's a big thing with Swamp Thing. If there's just like a literal desert, if there's no plant life, none, like not even on a bacterial level, Swamp Thing can't teleport himself there, and there's nothing for him to control when he is there.
Sure.
But he can take a little of something and make a lot. He has more like Jesus-y power.
Oh.
You know, if there's tiny like microflora, he can grow them into something he could use.
Jesus a he turned water into wine.
Yeah. Yeah, that is transmutation. Or what do they call it? Transubstantiation or whatever. But like that is that Jesus has transmutation powers. Definitively.
Fuck yeah.
Jesus also has like replication powers.
Whoa.
There's a few things going on with Jesus. Hey, have you heard about this cool dude? You know someone who does have transmutation powers.
My little friend JC.
Little guy I know called Jesus Christ. Yeah, but Swamp
Isn't a
Thing,
fucking steak-proof ham.
if you drop Swamp Thing in like a vacuum sealed room with no plant life in there, he could only make more out of himself.
Sure.
He can't make it out of nothing, which I think definitively means that the elemental avatars, like from the green or the red or the rot, cannot transmute elements.
Yeah.
What was the other part of that question?
Was basically if basically do they count of like for Grundy
right
2GL?
Oh, right. So there's kind of another thing happening here. So Grundy can't, just fully cannot. Green Lantern, not just the Golden Age one, but even like regular Green Lantern, there is a slight interesting question of what fully goes on with their rings.
Sure.
The Golden Age one, the Starheart is more kind of magic, sorcery, and the Hal and Guy and all of their rings are more like tech and science. And we've talked about this before. They can make constructs, right? And you just go like, well, that's just hard light.
Yeah.
But they also have uniforms. And their uniforms look like uniforms. They're not just glowing green cubes. And their uniforms behave like fabric and rip. And Hal has willed a ring into existence before.
Wow.
So there is like an element with Green Lantern of, with enough willpower, you take a thing that is at first only manifesting as like a shape made of will, and you turn it into you will it so hard it becomes the real thing. Like you start with a kind of dummy version.
Do you think
and then
Santa
you make
Claus
it
is a
real.
lantern, like a ring bearer? Like,
no, Santa is like canonically a dream.
Oh, just because if you believe it hard enough.
But he also, like, on the map of the multiverse, Santa Claus is listed under, I think, Dreamland.
Whoa.
Which actually makes him a creation of Morpheus.
Crazy.
Which is, so in the way that the Corinthian is like a rogue nightmare, Santa is like a dream unleashed and like allowed to be real. So yeah, I mean, there is an argument to be made that Green Lantern has a limited, maybe not controlled, ability to transmute elements, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. This is probably also a good time to say the elemental thing is interesting because briefly there was this idea that Firestorm, character we're already talking about, was actually like a fire elemental. We sometimes roll back around to the idea that the Firestorm Matrix, like some of these other things, is actually more than an accident. That there must be someone hosting the Firestorm, you know what I mean?
Sure.
That it's like bigger than it. And they did that with Firestorm where he was like meant to be a fire elemental. They've actually touched on it a few times. And the one most recent in memory is like in Brightest Day. So when Ronnie is brought back to life at the end of Blackest Night, then in Brightest Day in that series, they talk about Firestorm kind of becoming a fire elemental, and they have to, in the context with Swamp Thing and stuff like that, that there's these kind of different things. A Parliament of Flames, even, like I think is mentioned at some point. That idea is sort of evaporated.
Yeah.
But there is this kind of, there was a brief question mark idea of it. But I think even at that, it doesn't mean that all things across the board could just do transmutation. Like, Firestorm can't teleport. Swamp Thing can effectively teleport. So I don't think it's like, well, if he's going to be a thing, he has to, like, I don't think it just blanket works across the board. Yeah.
And Grundy?
No, I mean, Grundy even less so. Even if you take the Earth 2 Grundy, who's like an avatar of the Rot, it's like I said, I think we've definitively proven that those, like, kingdoms, the Rot, the Red, the Green, cannot transmute elements.
Okay. Next question comes from Ben Forsh Stewart.
Well, lock the door for coming in.
Yeah, please. And I want you to come in.
Jesus. Still said it.
Yeah. Jesus, I fucking want it so bad.
Jesus Christ. Tell me when you're going to do it.
Lock the fucking door. Ben Forsh Stewart asks, how did the CW get Firestorm's powers so wrong?
Fun fact, they didn't.
Holy fuck.
But
holy shit.
but they take their sweet ass time.
Yes.
They take their sweet time.
Because he was
getting
Fire Guy for a long time.
So when you first meet Firestorm in season 1 of The Flash, when it's Ronnie, it's all he could do is like the flame kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Shoot flames, use them to fly. That's it. And that is true even when then they bring in what's his name? Jax as the new one.
Yeah.
So Jacksonstein, they can only do that for a bit. And again, they always come back to it's just he has this power and he can shoot it out. On Legends, even for a bit, it's like that. And then Legends has a moment where they go like, we have fucking Firestorm.
Yeah.
And they made it at first that when he merged, then the old one was like, one of them was already wearing the thing that looks like the Firestorm symbol,
yeah.
and then they would merge together.
Yes, I remember when they
At a certain point in Legends,
split.
they would merge together, and then he would have a costume. And it was the first inkling that there was like a transmutation thing happening. That like as they merged, some of that matter became costume. You know what I mean? And then I think it's the Invasion crossover. It was when they would do the Arrowverse crossovers. They did the one where the Dominators, like the aliens invade.
Yes.
And they're going to drop the gene bomb. And it's the first time you see Firestorm transmute as a power on the show. He's on top of the bomb, and he goes like, I don't think I could do it. And they're like, you can do it. You know,
yeah.
And he you see the kind of the waves of his power going out, and he turns the bomb into water.
I do remember that. Yeah.
It's the first time you see Firestorm transmute elements in the Arrowverse. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not 100% sure how many more times you see him actually do it, but he does do it. And it is in there. I think it was probably more just a function of story and other things, but they do give him that moment. He can do it. Technically, that power is in his power set, even in the Arrowverse.
I totally forgot that he had done that.
Yeah. It's a good moment too because it does feel like like they did this with a couple of characters on the Arrowverse. Like when you first meet the Atom, it's just a suit. He calls it the Atom suit because it like stands for some stupid shit, but he's just regular sized and punching guys. And then at the end of a season of Arrow, season 4 maybe or something, season 3, it looks like he dies in an explosion, and you learn that he's been tampering with Dwarf Star material, and he ends up very tiny. And then so the Atom had already been on the show for a bit, just as a guy with a suit who decides that vigilantism is cool.
Yeah.
And then later he gets the definitive atom power of shrinking.
Oh my god.
So the show does it a few times actually, where they bring someone in and they go like, is that what we're doing? And I think in the case of the Atom, and I don't know how true this is, but the thing I remember hearing is that they were maybe going to bring in Blue Beetle. And then they were told they couldn't, and it was like late, and they hadn't really set up a shrinking guy in stories, so they just adjusted it. And then once they were past what they had sort of been setting up, then they were like, now we can have him shrink. Weird. But he was just going to be like a guy in a suit with tech and that, which would have, and the way they play Ray Palmer in that show would have really worked for Ted Kord. So I think sometimes it's there's production things, and sometimes it's story things, and sometimes they're like, do we have the budget to show them transmuting elements all the time? Like,
I mean, yeah.
I think these are all considerations that happen, but they do eventually give Firestorm that moment, and it's pretty cool because you've been like, you're like, if you read comics, you go like, I know what Firestorm could do here.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool to see him finally do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's leave Instagram and head on over to Reddit,
where everyone's nice and no one's ever mean.
First question and only question from Reddit.
God, you really paused there. I thought someone was mean.
No. Coming from GCPD Officer 5562.
Probably corrupt.
Hashtag all GCPD
are
bad.
Shit.
A GCPD A
S. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Who asks, what's the difference between Metamorpho and AVM Man?
So Metamorpho we've talked about.
Animal, vegetable, mineral man.
AVM Man. Yeah. Doom Patrol villain called Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. I mean, strictly speaking, I do actually think AVM Man had some kind of transmutation powers, not unlike Metamorpho. AVM Man he has these powers where his one side of his body, his arm and leg, he could turn into vegetable matter, like plant matter. The other arm and leg, he can turn into like mineral matter, like stone or gems or whatever. And then his torso and the side of his head and everything are animal matter. And it's almost always the form of a T-Rex head.
Love that.
It's more fucked up than it is on the show. On the show, he just grows a T-Rex head next to him. In the comics, the T-Rex head is mostly there, but his face is half in the neck of the T-Rex. Like, it doesn't line up.
Yeah.
It's more fucked up. You almost always see him in that configuration, though. Plant,
sure.
Mineral, dino.
Yeah. Milk, lemonade. Yeah.
Around the corner, Dino's face.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fucking crush at this comedy games thing I'm doing on the weekend. Oh man.
Something my wife.
something my wife. So, but I do think, even though you normally see him in that configuration, I do think, technically speaking, AVM Man can make any kind of vegetable or any kind of mineral,
sure,
or whatever. So now the question is it almost, in a weird way, it almost seems clearer with the mineral side. If he was like diamonds and then he became metal, just in those mineral parts, I would go, that's transmutation.
Sure, yeah.
But if he just became different plants, I'd be like, that's like Swamp Thing. That's just plant matter being reorganized. Because plant matter is more or less one thing.
Yeah.
It's, plant cells. You know what I mean? And so then I go like, you're not actually made of it, something different. Like matter and cells and that, they have different components and things like that, but they're ultimately a proportion of carbon, a proportion of, like, you're not changing that the way you would on the mineral side. Same thing with the animal side. It wouldn't be quite the same. So I guess what I'm saying is that I think AVM Man has a tiny bit of transmutation power, but only in the M of AVM. Like,
amazing.
I mean, I'm crazy splitting hairs here, and maybe like a scientist is listening. I don't believe that.
Not this podcast.
No, wrong show. But I think by the logic I've set up in this episode, the animal and vegetable parts of him are you're just kind of you're reorganizing.
Sure.
The mineral part he might actually be able to transmute a little bit.
Whoa.
So then, the big difference with Metamorpho, like, technically he could turn himself into anything. So he could be organic or inorganic. He could do it to any body part, like he's more versatile, I guess. Yeah.
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 All right, let's leave Reddit and head on over to the doc scored.
Oh, fuck. Shit.
So smooth.
Fuck.
Just make a song.
Oh, come on, you doc scored. You scored and your docs. I'm doxing, you scored, and I'm doxing the docs, and you scored and the docs. When you're doxing, you scored. And the docs was scored to be doxing. Come scored up your docs and doxing the docs, because the docs, he's been scored in. I saw the Watchmen DVD behind you.
Wow, that's how you got there.
That's how I got there.
Wow.
Oh, God.
The ducks.
That was pretty good.
The times they are
You nodded
changing.
so confidently, like you were like, "Oh, I've been sitting on a good Dylan for years." I said that was good, and you went, "Yeah,
yeah."
I know."
Catch up. The times they are a doxing. All right. First question comes from which devil sorcerer? All right. Question they ask is Mr. 103 104 still around? Is he now Mr. 118? He's actually the Mr. 305.
He's Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah. Mr. 305.
It's another Doom Patrol villain.
Is that? Of course it is.
So, he, Mr. 103,
Yeah.
as he was originally called,
Yeah.
is doing some kind of experiment in teleportation. And obviously, by a certain understanding, I don't know whether or not
From a certain point of
from a
view.
certain point of view, teleportation is like stripped down
Sure.
things to subatomic particles, either, encode how to build it or send the actual particles themselves somewhere else and then reassemble them. And something goes wrong with the thing, and he ends up kind of with a bit of like a matter manipulation kind of power. He calls himself Mr. 103 because at the time, I think that would have been like the highest element number, the highest atomic weight of a stable element on the periodic table was 103.
Yeah.
And then when they added one, he did become Mr. 104. And yes, if he were around now, I think he'd have to be Mr. 118, unless there's an additional one. I think we're up to 118 varying levels of stable elements. This is always kind of a funny thing because you just go well, the atomic weight, or the number rather, is just how many protons you have. So theoretically, you just go add one more. There's 119. Great, let's name it.
Yeah.
But they don't do it and add it to the periodic table until they can basically say that it exists. Nothing theoretical is on the periodic table, is what I mean to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, if Mr. 103 showed up again, he would have to be called Mr. 118. Yeah, and Lord help us, the day becomes Mr. 305. Yeah.
All right. Next question comes from.
He would show up and he'd be like, take a picture of me with a Kodak.
Oh my God.
At Times Square, see me picture with a Kodak.
Yeah. Best rhyming
Jesus.
ever.
Good Lord.
Yeah. I just want to walk out of the water onto a beach.
Yeah.
Hashtag put the dog down.
Ocean to ocean.
Anyways.
I'm the real Great Gatsby.
I hate this so much.
Hashtag put the dog down.
Next question comes from JK, who asks, what?
Could Mr. 103 turn... see, here's what I don't remember. If Mr. 103 could transmute other elements, or if it was Metamorpho style, where he could change himself into elements. He's a Doom Patrol villain, so it probably makes more sense if he could turn himself into things, but I truly don't remember. So that's a little question mark there. Sorry, Mr. 118. Mr. Worldwide!
JK asks,
Yeah.
let's say that Ronnie Raymond and Professor Stein or any of the other people who've been touched by the Matrix can't be Firestorm.
Right.
Who in the DC universe, who aren't already costume heroes, would you like to see take on that role?
Well, if you're saying no one who has ever been in contact or part of the Firestorm Matrix in any way can have it, that also counts out the entirety of the Justice League. It counts out the Justice League of America. This is the New 52 era, because they were all trapped inside the Firestorm Matrix during Forever Evil.
But also no costume heroes.
Oh, and no costumed heroes. Wait, is that what the question said?
Yeah.
I was definitely not listening.
It says who aren't already costume heroes.
Oh. Well, then shit.
So nobody that's touched it.
Oh, interesting. So just other characters.
Yeah.
I mean,
Jimmy Olsen and Perry White.
that would be such a waste of the Firestorm Matrix. There's no way either of them know the chemical makeup of things. You know what I mean? Jimmy would be like, I don't know, Mr. White. Mr. White would be like, I don't know what fucking sodium is.
It would be so funny.
It would be funny. It feels like it'd be a bit of a waste. That's pretty funny. I don't hate that. That's a pretty funny idea. Let's see, who aren't already costumed heroes. I think the president of the United States and the
Lex Luthor?
and the president of Russia should be forced together in some sort of real ham-fisted allegory for nuclear disarmament.
Wow, look at you.
Yeah.
You're so deep.
But only if it's Reagan, a voice I refuse to try again.
I am not a firestorm.
It's me, Ronald Reagan.
Tear down that firestorm.
Tear down that Matrix. I've seen that movie.
You are the one.
Which one of you is Keanu? Is that Reagan? Am I doing it?
It's close enough.
It's closer than I was.
Yeah, it's true. It's much closer than this.
It's a bombard accent.
It's a bombard firestorm.
You make a big mistake.
Okay.
General Secretary.
You're getting real trouble.
I mean, I'm doing a Gungan accent. It's basically just blackface. It's really bad.
Jesus. All right. Next question comes from Lilith, who asks, is Danny the Street capable of transmutation? The changing of people and places therein certainly seems like transmutation.
I think it's probably more of a shapeshift thing than anything. Danny can teleport.
Yep.
And he can alter like the window dressings. He changes the signs. Like if you watch Doom Patrol, it's a really good interpretation of Danny, which is a weird, tough concept, and they pull it off really well on the show. I think that's mostly shapeshifting though. Like Danny at no point just like turns a fire hydrant into like whatever, something like you never just there's never just spontaneous alchemical changes happening.
Danny just like
Danny
is a street. That street doesn't change.
Well, I mean, the street can change. It could be in a different position, and a different shop might open. But that's like growing or shrinking, as opposed to like he can never just be air. I mean, he's always a thing, right? He's either the brick, he's Danny the brick, or he's Danny the ambulance, or he's Danny the
But isn't forming from a thing to a thing? Isn't that not transmutation?
I mean, again, we're in the weeds slightly here. I mean, like there are the characters we've been talking about so far, almost all, like the ones where we've said they have transmutation powers. They can not only do shape changing stuff, they can change instantaneously at a base level what they are from one thing to another thing.
Sure.
A thing that is chemically impossible.
Sure.
I don't think Danny does that.
Okay.
I think Danny like has, like what is everything made of? And I think that's all in him. And I think he can replicate it. I think he can stretch it. And I think he can shape it. But I don't know that he
can bop it. He can twist it.
It, twist it, flick it. Man, did that game come in handy.
Yeah, good thing I was doing it with my tongue the whole time.
Yeah, I promise I'm good at this, but I'm going to just need you every second and a half to give me a command. New instruction. Yeah. I promise it'll be worth it.
Oh, fuck, I flicked it, then switched it.
Shit.
Now I got to start over.
Also, you're gonna have to speed up as we go.
It's part of the game.
Are boppets like a thing outside of Canada?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know.
It was It was like a Simon Says kind of thing.
Yeah, you like go into your family's basement, and
I had the one with the that looked like a steering wheel that had the 5 things.
Oh, sure.
The bop it, twist it,
yeah,
pull it,
yeah,
flick it, and
finish.
Yeah. Call it a whore. I can't remember what the 5th thing was.
Next question comes from Tone DX2049, who asks, which ability would you prefer more? The ability to change things into material objects, things into atoms or elements, things into animals, or things into people or humanoid versions of the object.
That's an interesting path. That last one is interesting to me. What would
That's
you pick?
the one that like tickles my interest.
You're asking if I want Beauty and the Beast witch powers?
Yeah.
Yes. I want to make like a table be like, I'm a table. It's me.
A fucked up table. I'm a table.
General Secretary.
Oh my god, he says tear down the wall, but it's actually like his friend. That's fucked up.
Yeah, well, he wronged me, and I'm vengeful.
He fucked the chair, and that's my wife.
The chair is the table's wife.
Yeah.
Got fucked by the
A
wall. I think that one is interesting to me. To make anthropomorphic things.
Yeah.
That's a fun power.
I want to try the gray stuff. I heard it's delicious.
Yeah, but I don't want it to talk to me while I'm doing it.
It's kind of part of it for me.
Oh, okay.
Tell me I'm
Yeah.
a whore.
Yeah. Lose this number.
Fuck yeah.
Tell me I'm a whore like I'm a bop it. Like I'm a black market bop it. Pull it. Bop it.
Yeah.
Flick it. Call me a whore. Spit in my mouth.
Flick it. Now call the president of the United States.
Give me the nuclear codes.
Twist it.
Twist it.
Last question.
That's a really good bit. Oh man, you're on fire today. You're doing good today.
Hell yeah. Last question comes from We've Only Just done, who asks, how do Shift's abilities and personality compare to Metamorpho? Would you like to see him make a comeback?
So Shift is interesting. Shift is like a piece of Metamorpho that broke off and then became sentient on its own.
Whoa.
So Shift has the same powers as Metamorpho, roughly. Shift has a more kind of outgoing personality. I think he's a bit more kind of bombastic than Rex is. As far as I remember, Shift had the additional ability of transmuting things that weren't him.
Yeah.
But he had to do it through physical touch, which is also similar in a way to what Element Lad of the Legion had for a bit. It wasn't always the case, but maybe the 3-boot Legion or whatever. No, it's before
3-boot.
I can't remember. But one version of Element Lad of the Legion, the thing with his powers was that he had to be in contact with a thing to change it elementally. Yeah. Shift was like that too. So Shift could do the Metamorpho thing of changing himself. It could also change other things. So it's an additional power that Metamorpho doesn't have. Eventually, I think Shift just gets reabsorbed by Metamorpho. Like they become one being again. But yeah, Shift was, I think, a bit more outgoing and shit like that. Yeah.
Well, holy Shift.
There you go, baby.
That was the last question. Which means it's time to tell you where to...
Hey, I just remembered. You've been telling me for weeks that you have a cool, fun new game for us to play.
Yep. And oh shoot!
And you told me before we recorded it that you were finally ready to reveal it. And you promised me that it in no way would be disappointing.
Nope.
You actually said it will be the highlight of the episode.
And here it is.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Okay.
Oh God, that was so much fun.
Richard, you cannot say that on the podcast.
What?
I can't believe that. Okay, we're gonna have to like actually bleep that. I've been doing it as a bit, but that's fucked up.
I just think
I can't believe you don't say the word again. You're about to say it.
Just 10 little.
No. I think you need to go back to the not that drawing board.
I just got I got some ideas that I think need to be communicated to the world.
Yikes.
Anyways.
Well, maybe next week.
If you want to know what those are, why don't you reach out to us through our various social media platforms, and you can even send us a question for next week's episode.
You definitely can send us a question for next week's episode.
And that theme is...
because that episode is TBD.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
What that stands for
total
badass
butt destruction.
Total.
We're going to be spending the whole episode talking about Green Arrow's famous spicy chili.
babe, things are getting a little stale. I was wondering if we could try TBD
Yeah, I'm
tonight.
DTF TBD style. It's my birthday. Can we do total butt destruction?
If you want to know what that
It's normal February.
all right, send those questions about total butt destruction
I mean, don't do that.
to Facebook
Dr. DC Podcast.
and Butt Book.
Dr. Butt Podcast.
The name has changed.
Yep.
To our Twitter,
At Dr. DC.
Instagram,
Dr. DC Podcast.
our email.
DrDCPodcast@gmail.com.
Come on our subreddit.
Or, I mean, I wouldn't say that. r/Dr_DC.
I want photos of it.
Yikes.
But I mean, that is a thing that Mean Boys had, where there was something about like coming on a photo of somebody, and then somebody did it, and took a photo, and sent it to them.
Jesus Christ.
The doc phone is always open.
208-917-3238.
28917 DCEU.
If you're nasty.
We got a TikTok.
At Dr. DC.
Yeah, we don't post onto it, but we lurk.
I would say 1 in every 4 videos on my For You page right now is Anne Hathaway dancing at that Fashion Week party.
I mean,
she was always gorgeous.
she was
But then
fine.
she had a kid. Now she's like a bit thicker.
Yeah,
Now
that's what it is.
Now I'm really into Anne
That's
Hathaway.
yeah.
Yeah.
She,
Because before it's like you're objectively beautiful, but also like
yeah, and
now Anne Hathaway's got it going on.
yeah, and can Hathaway way with me.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Or like Shakespeare style and Hathaway of getting me torqued.
Yeah, just like Shakespeare hath said.
Shakespeare's wife's name was Anne Hathaway.
Whoa,
Fun
that's
fact.
right. We've got a website, drdcpodcast.com or .ca.
Thank you for doing that while I was drinking.
Why don't you give us a 5-star review?
No, I want an answer to that. Why don't you give us a 5-star review?
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
We got a Patreon.
Cool.
Well, I was like, you can't send us
Jesus.
mail, so.
Right. Yeah. Patreon.com/DrDC.
Yeah.
There's a $1, $5, $7 level. They all give you access to the Doc Squad, our awesome fan community. And at the higher levels, you get bonus episodes. You get theme polls, all sorts of fun stuff that helps to support us.
And it's normal February.
It's normal February, so get excited.
Yeah, who knows what that means? We sure do. That's it for this week. Ciao, ciao.
Adios. I almost said jerk.
Heroes, they always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure, they are men of might.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.